Welcome to the fourth episode of Kabbalistic Mystic, the podcast for the Western seeker, where we explore the ancient Hebrew wisdom and the Tree of Life as the lost spiritual heritage of the West. I'm Batat, your host, and in this episode, we'll talk about the structure of the mind. Scientists know a lot about how the brain functions in the physical world, but very little is known about the mind itself, its various parts, and their specific roles in human evolution. Hebrew wisdom offers a very detailed map of consciousness and, as such, of the individual and cosmic parts of our minds. And we'll go over them and then discuss why having an intellectual grasp of how the mind works can be pivotal in our personal journey of psychospiritual development. Let's begin.
Well, good night, son.
Dad?
Yeah?
What is the mind? Is it just a system of impulses, or is it something tangible?
Relax. What is mind? No matter. What is matter? Never mind.
Thanks, Dad.
Good night, son.
The wit Homer Simpson is quoting is by a British philosopher named George Berkeley, after which the famous university and town is named. And he created what is called subjective idealism. It's a philosophical doctrine claiming that only mental content exists in the universe. That is, there is no matter. A table cannot exist without being perceived by the mind. Does it sound familiar to some of you? I mean, those of you who had a chance to listen to the previous episodes of Kabbalistic Mystic will recognize these statements to be somewhat matching what Hebrew wisdom tells us. And it tells us that the two building blocks of the universe, light and consciousness, are really all that exist. All matter is light particles that vibrate in different speeds and densities. And our conscious perception perceives it to be all that is around us, including our bodies. You see, all sciences, including the vast array of philosophical doctrines, are revolving around the same truth, each describing a different part of it and attempt to extrapolate and expand on its point. We get closer and closer to the truth as we advance as a species. Some sciences or philosophies are more on point than others. And the test for their accuracy is in the practical consequences of their subjective truth. Now, I have not studied subjective idealism, but logic says that if matter does not exist in all its perception of the mind, then there must be a behind-the-scenes structure for the mind, and that structure must somehow connect us all. Because we all perceive a table to be a table. We all perceive the laws of the universe to be what they are. Idealism claims that this structure consists of the human mind as well as of God's. Hebrew wisdom is slightly different. It's suggesting that everything, from the smallest atom to the largest star, has its own consciousness. That is, it exists in conscious perception of its creator, which can be a subset of God, regardless if we perceive it as humans. So there's really no dependency on the human mind. So the emphasis on humans is much less focused in Hebrew wisdom, positioning humanity really as a tiny speck in the vast array of conscious existence. And when it comes to the human mind, Hebrew wisdom offers us a more intricate detail of this structure, including the inner workings and ways in which the parts communicate with each other. In fact, it is such an important piece of the puzzle that some of the Hebrew letters, and consequently tarot cards from the major arcana, are dedicated to it. Like everything else in the universe, our mind is divided into a feminine and masculine parts. That is, the intellectual mind has two parts, the masculine and the feminine. However, each and every one of us is also connected to the universal cosmic mind, which of course has also two parts, a masculine and a feminine polarity. So in reality, there are four players here. And we're going to talk about all these players today. The masculine and the feminine sides of our own intellectual minds and the masculine and feminine sides of the cosmic mind. Then we tap into superconsciousness, which connects us to the universal mind of our own sublogos, that is, the collective consciousness of our species in our own little corner of creation in the universe. And then, it goes on beyond and beyond. Now, two things I want to say before we start talking about this. First, set aside the idea of the left and right brain as the masculine and feminine parts. It's true that a portion of our brain is more masculine, linear in its thinking, logical, and the other one is more feminine, that is, artistic and intuitive. But there are many intuitive and abstract functions in the left hemisphere of our brain and many, many logical linear functions in the right one. Furthermore, for some, the polarities are reversed. That is, the left lobe is the predominant feminine one and the right one is the more masculine. Also, in this discussion, we're not really discussing the physical brain. We're discussing the building blocks of the metaphysical archetypal mind, regardless to the way they reflect in the physical realm, which you must remember is only a product of our conscious awareness. Now, the second point I want to make is actually a request. I want to ask those of you who have studied psychodynamic theory, psychiatry, or any other body of knowledge in terms of how the human psyche works, to leave it at the door. Try to forget what you know. Hebrew wisdom shuffles the card a little bit and similar terms are used, unfortunately. Now, I'll try to point out distinctions whenever I can, or at least in one particular place where it's really critical. But entering this body of knowledge with a beginner's mind will help you make sense of it. In fact, I found that Hebrew wisdom really simplifies things when it comes to the understanding of the human psyche, and I really, truly hope that you will feel the same. So let's start with the intellectual mind. As we said, there's two parts to it. The first one is called the conscious mind, and that is the masculine part. It is reason, the part of our mind which can think and is capable of both deductive and inductive reasoning. And everything we are aware of is processed and brought to our conscious awareness by the conscious mind. I have an itch on my left arm. I must tighten this screw to make this machine work. 2 + 2 is 4. I love this song. Every thought, including the awareness of who you think you are, is created by your conscious mind. It builds on what it knows and learns since birth, that is, on experience and logic, and it processes information which comes from the senses and from the subconscious mind, which we'll talk about next. It has the ability to imagine and intellectualize various possibilities and outcomes based on past experiences and knowledge. Now, the masculine conscious mind is capable of both deductive and inductive reasoning. We mentioned that before, and let's talk a little bit about what that means. Let's first start with inductive reasoning for a minute, and we'll come back to deductive reasoning when we speak of the subconscious mind. Inductive reasoning is the ability to induce conclusions based on assumptions which might be false. That is, you can think something like, if my wife was at home, she would have called me by now. Or, if this pan is hot, I will burn myself by touching it. The pan might be cold. The wife might be home and choose not to call. But we can induce reason out of what can be true or false. This faculty is critical for us to function. It allows us to choose without knowing the correct answer. It is our reason, no pun intended, that we have the capability to will, that is, to choose what we want to do in any given moment. If we knew everything, we wouldn't be able to choose. We choose because we don't know. We use inductive reasoning. Our conscious mind has two jobs. One is to apply the intellect, that is, to calculate things. 5 + 5 is 10. If I put this support beam here, it will help support the weight. Without the intellect, we would not be able to co-create in the physical world. It is the masculine side of our creativity. Even an artist must use the intellect to master the media with which he or she is working. How to use paint, techniques to carve stone. Our ability to use our intellect is allowing us to reason and is helping us with the second job of the conscious mind, which is to choose. Choice is the essence of free will. It allows us to reflect on past experiences and our memory with the help of the intellect to determine what we choose to do in any given moment. I'll go to the store. I'll stay home. I decided to go back to school and finish my master's. We choose in every moment. We are unaware of most of our choices. They have become habits and are no longer in our awareness. You get up in the morning, you go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth. You don't think, well, I'll brush my teeth because otherwise they'll eventually fall off. You just do it. These choices are handled by your mind without you having to exert the energy to use your intellect to make the choice. That is habit. Unfortunately, many of our habits are unproductive ones to which we do not pay attention to. Regardless, it is the job of the conscious mind to pay attention so we can deductively and inductively reason and then choose. Now, before we speak of the subconscious mind, here's a note for those of you who studied psychology. Notice that I'm not using the term unconscious mind. In psychodynamic theory, the term unconscious mind is used to describe mental processes of which individuals make themselves unaware of. According to Hebrew wisdom, some of these mental processes fall under the category of the conscious mind, and some fall under the category of the subconscious mind, which we'll talk about next. Now, Freud has used the term subconscious in the late 1800s, but he later refused to use it. And here's what he said, and that was in 1926. He said, if someone talks about subconsciousness, I cannot tell whether he means the term topographically, to indicate something lying in the mind beneath consciousness, or qualitatively, that is, to indicate another consciousness, a subterranean one, as it were. He's probably not clear about any of it. The only trustworthy antithesis is between conscious and unconscious. So that was Freud, and in Freudian theory, only the term unconscious mind is used. Still, it is often mistakenly replaced by the term subconscious. And this is why I avoid using the term unconscious mind altogether. In the context of Hebrew wisdom, there is only the conscious mind and the subconscious. And there's a difference between not having conscious awareness and being unconscious. There's much activity in our conscious mind that we're not aware of. These are the processes described in Freudian theory. That is, processes that are not brought to our conscious awareness. But in Hebrew wisdom, they are still a part of the conscious mind. According to Hebrew wisdom, every intellectual thought that we can potentially be aware of at any given moment, now or in the future, by the mere function of paying attention, is a faculty of the conscious mind. That includes all that the ego personality is preventing us from seeing, that is, the blind sides of our conscious mind. So what is the subconscious mind in Hebrew wisdom? It is the feminine part of our mind, of our individualized, of our intellectual mind. It is incapable of inductive reasoning, which we previously explained, and only capable of deductive reasoning. Now, deductive reasoning means that you deduce on what is known to be true. The sun is shining. It is daytime. The doorbell just rang. Someone was at the door and hit the buzzer. It's hot in here. I'm starting to sweat. Deductive reasoning knows that something is true and decides what to do based on these facts. I'll get up. I'll go to the door. I'll take off my sweater. In other words, the subconscious mind cannot induce on what is not known to be 100% correct. She, I call her she because she is the feminine part of our intellectual mind, is using analysis and deductive reasoning to perform its job, which has three parts. The first part of her job is to be the center of the passive involuntary information. That is, the cosmic design of our current incarnation, the memory of all that we've experienced, as well as responsible to store all new experience as memory. The second part of her job is to animate the conscious mind into conscious experience into matter. That is, she creates and controls your physical vessel, the body. And the third job is to be the channel of communication between you and your cosmic mind, which is the higher self. So let's talk about these three jobs. The subconscious mind knows your life's purpose. She has knowledge of everything that is going on in the conscious mind, the masculine and conscious mind, the things you think about, even the deepest motives that we hide from ourselves, she is aware of. She can tell between the parts of our personality that are the false ego, the shadow, the true nature. She has knowledge of our natural gifts and the specific predispositions of our personality in this incarnation. She knows exactly how the body functions. She's the one generating and animating it. She has detailed memory of all of our experience and uses it to animate us. For example, she's the one causing us to breathe heavily when we hear a sound or smell a scent which is associated with a childhood trauma. She's the part of us which can receive telepathic communications, that is, vibrations of thought and emotions from other beings we interact with. She can also receive vibratory communication from our cosmic mind, both the masculine and feminine parts of it. And she has intricate and complete knowledge of all the laws of nature and how they work. In other words, she knows the way. She has the map for our incarnation, the map which can lead us to our destination of self-realization. Not what will happen, that is to be determined and is being determined as we go along, but how to make it happen. And with every choice that we make, she knows if it's setting us on the right track or veering us away from it. For her, there are no what ifs. There's only deductive reasoning. She's like a robot. She does her job perfectly, like a well-oiled machine. She does not question herself. She always knows what to do. She's the most sophisticated machine you could ever conceive. She's perfect. She knows everything she needs to know in order to do her job and can lead us towards self-realization. But the only problem is she cannot share any of this knowledge with the conscious part of our mind. Bummer, I know. There are two reasons for that. First, she resides behind a thick veil of forgetfulness, which we automatically embody upon birth. And that veil of forgetfulness is metaphorically depicted in the Bible as the Tower of Babel. And this veil is preventing our conscious mind, our masculine conscious mind, from accessing the same information that she, the subconscious mind, has. The veil is enabling us to have the freedom to choose. Remember, we said if you knew everything, you wouldn't be choosing. Imagine you knew what your life purpose was and what were the lessons you need to learn from the moment you were born. I know for some of you who are suffering, say, oh my God, I just want to know, right? But it would have diminished the value of your entire life. You wouldn't have the ability to choose what you wanted to do. And you'd either try to get it done too early when you're unprepared, or worse, to avoid it altogether. Our purpose is only joyful to us when we are ready to do it. If the veil of forgetfulness did not exist, you would have a direct connection to the divine. You'd know experientially, not intellectually, but as a fact, just like you know gravity to be an experiential fact, that this life is an illusion and is only one incarnation out of many. It would diminish the entire concept of faith. When we know something to be true, we cannot believe it. It becomes our concrete reality. We no longer need to believe it. It just is. Faith means taking a leap. Simply put, the veil of forgetfulness is what makes the game of life a mystery. It is called this way, a veil of forgetfulness, because it detaches us from the inner and cosmic memory as well as knowledge. And this veil is the reason why we falsely identify ourselves with our physical body, identifying who we are with the vessel in which we reside. Since we remember nothing prior to the veil, that is, prior to birth, we only know the boundaries of our bodies to be the edges of the eye. It causes us to develop an ego personality and a shadow, which makes the game even more interesting. Self-realization means the dissolution of this ego personality to the point where we have identified with our true nature, which is beyond the physical vessel we live in. And it also means acting up our purpose according to our life programming as determined by a higher self. And this must happen by our own will, by our own choice, which is enabled by the veil, giving us a blank page on which we can write and draw our lives as we please. Now, the second reason that the subconscious mind cannot talk to us is because she cannot use the language of the conscious mind, which is an intellectual thought. The conscious mind is linear and is depicted in Hebrew wisdom as a line. And the subconscious mind is nonlinear and depicted as a wave. That's why if you look at the logo of Kabbalistic Mystic, you'll see there's a line and a wave creating together the Star of David. Now, simply put, even without the veil, the subconscious mind wouldn't be able to tell you, hey, do this or stop doing that. She can only act and express herself abstractly, non-linearly. So you can perceive her through your senses. And she does it. She does it perfectly, in fact, through the veil, through the representation you have of her in your conscious mind. That is your body. The subconscious mind is the body. Remember, all matter in the universe is light perceived by our consciousness according to its density and speed and pattern of vibration. Our body is no different. It's only a perception of your mind, and she creates it. So the perception of your mind of anything physical that is you is your subconscious. She creates it through experience, through sensation, through memory. In other words, the body is a manifestation of the mind. When I mentioned that piece of ancient wisdom at a dinner party once among fellow consciousness seekers, I think almost everyone raised their heads and stared at me and asked and said, it's the opposite. The body is real and the ego personality that is our mind is the fake piece of who we are. And I want to name that this is one of the most common widespread mistakes that is prevalent in the consciousness movement. It's true that we are a slave to our minds and that we're not who we think we are, pun intended. But the body is merely a manifestation of the mind, that is, the subconscious mind. The body is merely a conscious perception of our feminine principle, which is the subconscious mind. It is created by her, and she uses it to communicate with the conscious you, which is the masculine principle. She does it through bodily sensations and dis-ease. Every emotion has a very distinct bodily sensation. We just train ourselves to ignore it because they are uncomfortable, most of them at least, unpleasant to feel. We distract ourselves through external stimulation, which our conscious mind perceives, allowing ourselves to bury our emotional sensations below the surface of thought. For example, I was stuck in a well-paying job that I really hated, and I couldn't make the choice to leave because the money was too good, and I eventually had chest pains and forced to quit. It is the subconscious mind who did that. She knows our life programming and will respond to our thoughts, words, and action by using the body as her communication tool. And she does it perfectly and on time. So it's not that the subconscious mind cannot talk to us. She can. In fact, she does. But she must do it via sensation. She also communicates to you via your dreams and through various accidents or dis-ease, which are nothing but a failed body function. Remember, the body is hers. She can make you trip. She can make you fall. She can make you not see an oncoming car. She's the one controlling all your involuntary organs. She's tending to them perfectly. You don't have to want to breathe. You just do. She does it all. Her desire is one and one only: to pursue the ultimate pleasure. Not the pleasure of the body, which are your appetite. She couldn't care less about money, about rich foods, about bodily pleasures, or any hedonist tendencies you might have. She knows that the ultimate pleasure is love, pursuing your passion, doing what you truly love, being all that you can be, and of course, connecting with your true nature, with the divine. In other words, she cares only about putting you back on the track of your life programming of self-realization as determined by your higher self. But there's only one problem. She has to do what you, that is the conscious mind, tells her to. Like all feminine principles in creation, the subconscious mind is the passive and involuntary one. She's very active, but only when instructed. The subconscious mind is powerless against your will. She is the body, but it is your conscious mind that is controlling and animating the body into action via willpower. She only controls the involuntary organs, the heart, the liver, the gallbladder, your blood pressure, all the involuntary functions which a normal person cannot control with their conscious mind. She's being instructed to do that by the cosmic portion of the subconscious mind, which we'll talk about later. But all the voluntary organs are under the control of the masculine conscious mind, her husband. When you wish to move a finger, you send the message to her and she passes it to the appropriate center, which is responsible of doing it. So you control the body when it comes to external action. She controls the body when it comes to internal functioning. Now, unfortunately, the conscious mind in most of us is subservient to the desires of the ego personality. In other words, the instructions we give her are based on our false desire, the desire that we think we have, that it was created by our mind. You see, in Hebrew wisdom, the essence of man is divided into two, will and pleasure. Will is the masculine essence. Pleasure is the feminine one. You can probably start seeing the ironic sophistication in the dynamics that I'm presenting to you. The subconscious mind knows your purpose and your ultimate pleasure, but cannot communicate with you because she's behind the veil and she cannot speak in the language of the intellect. Who you are is really the conscious mind who has no idea what your purpose or ultimate pleasure is, nor any experiential understanding of the true nature of reality. And your conscious mind, therefore, creates a false ego personality and works relentlessly to satisfy its false desires, that is, appetites, which rarely relate to the life programming and ultimate pleasure that you have. In fact, our appetites and false desire are used to satisfy the body, which the ego personality falsely identifies as the self. However, in reality, the body is really our conscious perception of her, the subconscious mind, who knows our true desire, but is helpless against our will. It's like this vicious cycle. She must comply with all that we want and tell her to do. She does it while trying to minimize the damage as much as possible, yet tries to communicate to us how to go back to our path. Simple example. Sugar is not good for me, and eating a lot of it is preventing me from doing what I need to do. I become hyper, and my mind does not function as well as it can. I then crash and I become tired, and often because of that, not doing my work, and I go to sleep. Now she, the subconscious mind, gives me the message every time via physical sensation, usually an itch on the skin, muscle twitches. It's subtle, and I usually ignore it, but it's there. And when I ignore it for a long amount of time or eat too much sugar, she tells me more by communicating via more severe responses. And we'll dedicate many episodes to the various tools of communications with the subconscious and our higher selves, such as meditation, dreams, and many practical day-to-day methods, including healing physical illnesses. But for now, just remember that any bodily sensation and emotion, which are really one and the same, as well as disease, is her telling you something about your path and false desire. It's all about desire. Is your desire the false one of the ego personality, or the true inner desire, which is the same as the desire of your higher self? And you see how this structure lines up with the teaching of other spiritual methodologies like Buddhism, for example, which tells us that the source of all suffering is desire. This desire is really the desire of the ego personality. It's the unpurified desire. It's the appetites of our physical existence, of the body with which the ego personality identifies as to be who we are. This is why in many religions we find the austere practitioner. It's really an attempt to embody the concept of avoidance of earthly desires. For some, it's a very important piece of their journey. I don't want to take away from it. We're all different. We all have a different path. We all have a different journey. However, being austere does not necessarily, and in fact, rarely means that we self-realize. The path to self-realization means we work to dissolve this identification with the ego personality and instead learn to listen to the guidance of our feminine principle as to what our true pleasure is and make choices which will move us towards it. And more often than not, the practice of continuous austerity is merely another side effect of our identification with the ego personality, neglecting aspects of self-love, our true divine nature, and the various joys that life has to offer, and we miss when we are being austere. Now, in the Hebrew letters, the subconscious mind, the feminine portion of our intellectual mind, is symbolized by the letter Dalet, and it means door in Hebrew. And this is because she's the door to our cosmic existence. She's the channel of communication between us and our higher self. In tarot, she's depicted by the Empress. In Judaism, the subconscious mind, or our feminine aspect, is symbolized as Shabbat, Sabbath, the seventh day. In Hebrew, all nouns are either masculine or feminine. Nothing is gender neutral in Hebrew. A table, for example, is masculine, a door is feminine, and Shabbat, as a noun, is also feminine. The ritual of accepting her into our hearts is done every Friday night, in which she is depicted as the bride. Boi kala Shabbat malkita, Jews say, which means, come bride, the queen Shabbath. The bride, the woman, is the feminine principle, which we invite to come in marriage with our conscious mind, that is the masculine principle. This piece of symbolic wisdom has been lost over the years. This symbolic union between the masculine and feminine mind is alluding to the need for us to follow to our true desire, to become subservient to her pleasure. And that's why it's a mitzvah in Judaism on Shabbat to have pleasure. Now, this is a great place for you to take a break. Today's topic is very long and somewhat complex, and it's a lot of information to take in. So if you wish to take a break and do this podcast in two pieces, this would be a great point to do it. But if you are ready, let's take a short break and then introduce the cosmic players that are behind the veil. We all have a higher self. It is a version of us that exists beyond space and time and is aware of the entire spiritual evolution of our individualized consciousness. It has tremendous intelligence beyond anything we can imagine, and it uses it to assist us in accumulating experiences throughout our lifetimes, which would progress us towards eventual perfect unity of the masculine and feminine principles, that is, back towards creation, towards divinity. That is the ultimate purpose of our repeating incarnations. The higher self is a totality of all that we ever were, are, and will be. It assists us with our life programming prior to our incarnation and guides us through our lives towards it. Now, the notion that there's another separate entity out there that can control our lives can be very daunting for some. But there's two things to remember. The first one is that the higher self is really you. It is the me that you think is you that is not the real one, just a temporary manifestation of your mind for the duration of this incarnation. The real you never dies, never grows old, only evolves. The second thing to remember is that the higher self can design the path, but like your subconscious, it is helpless against your free will, which is paramount. Your ability to choose for yourself is always there. Not only that, but your life programming is nothing but a high-level storyline. It's like a rough skeleton which you can use however you wish. The roads in which you can travel are intelligently designed in the moment as you live your life, continuously changing to fit what has and is happening. The higher self merely predetermines the lessons you need to learn, as well as various built-in constrictions that are designed to aid you in guiding you towards your purpose. Here's a quote from the raw material, describing the balance between the power of the higher self and your ability to control your life. The higher self is that self which assists with full understanding of the accumulation of experiences of the entity. aids the entity in achieving healing of the experiences which have not been learned properly, and assists in further life experience programming. The higher self is like the map in which the destination is known. The roads are very well known, these roads being designed by intelligent infinity working through intelligent energy. However, the higher self aspect can program only for the lessons and certain predisposing limitations if it wishes. The remainder is completely the free choice of each entity. There is the perfect balance between the known and the unknown. That was from the raw material. Now, the higher self is noted in the Hebrew alphabet as yet another principle of consciousness. It's the sixth letter of the alphabet, and it's called Vav. In tarot, it is the Hierophant. Think of the higher self as the cosmic version of your conscious mind, your masculine conscious mind. You and the higher self are two sides of the same coin, the masculine principles of the mind. One is intellectual, one is cosmic. In ancient Hebrew wisdom, you are the son, and the higher self is the father. God, what we call God, the creator of the universe, is merely experiencing itself through you. It never interferes. The cosmic, etheric worlds are just as complex as our physical world. There are many players, many roles that are involved in the game called life. The higher self is one of these entities or principles responsible to guide you through your journeys. Remember, the masculine principle is all about will. It is aligning ourselves with the will of the Father that is putting us on the highway to self-realization. Some even say that when you pray, you don't really pray for God the Creator, which again is merely experiencing itself through you and never interferes. You're really praying for your higher self. So how do we know what to do? How do we know more about our life programming? Maybe ask for it to be reprogrammed. How do we align our personal will with the will of the inner masculine, the cosmic Father that is the totality of our masculine principle? Well, that's not so easy to do. If it was, the game wouldn't be that interesting, would it? You see, you can't communicate directly with your higher self. Hebrew wisdom tells us that for that to happen, you must first transform your body. You have to raise its vibratory rate to a level where the higher self can manifest in it. Until this happens, you have only one tool at your disposal: communicating with him through her. Your subconscious mind, that is. She can speak to your higher self and deliver the message to you through a perceived sensation. Messages from the higher self are very distinct in their nature. We sense them as intuition. Intuition informs us with the intelligence of our cosmic story. It's always a vibration. It comes to us as a vibration. It is very different than an emotion and a feeling or any other physical phenomena. Some of us are very intuitive. Some of us must constantly learn how to detect it. The biggest barrier between us and our intuition is our mind. Our mind constructs a web of logic, which in turn we use to determine what needs to happen next and calculate our steps. Intuition is inner knowing, a draw, a desire that is unexplainable, sometimes unreasonable, like someone tapping on our shoulders and saying, "Look over there." Since the higher self communicates with us via the subconscious, intuition is considered a faculty of our feminine mind. And indeed, women and people who have a well-developed feminine side are very intuitive. Kids are extremely intuitive. Our job is to learn to detect our own intuition, especially as adults, and to learn how it reflects in our body as some kind of a sensation. We translate it to some kind of a sensation or a perception. That sensation might have a unique physical manifestation like pressure or any other sensation in the solar plexus or sometimes in other places in the body, even pressure in the mind, pressure in the brain. That vibration, after being sent to us by the subconscious mind, has to reach one of two places. The first one is the thinking frontal lobe of the brain, the part which distinguishes us from animals. In the frontal lobe, the intuitive vibration will have to be translated into a thought, which means we'll perceive it as an intuitive original thought. We can learn to distinguish it from regular thoughts created by our own mind by careful attention and by connecting it with a bodily sensation that we spoke about before. For me, for example, it's different for everyone, but for me, for example, it's much faster thought and it has no thread of logic behind it that led to it. It's almost like just appears out of nowhere. Now, the second place to which the intuitive message can be sent is the recording lobe of the brain. And in this lobe, the vibration will be translated into a sound, which means we'll hear a voice in our heads. Now, we know of many people who heard voices telling them to do something, especially in times of trouble, and some not. And, there's this association with a voice in my head. That means I'm crazy. But I want to stress two things. First of all, it doesn't mean you're crazy. It means that a vibration has reached your recording lobe and has been translated into a sound. So hopefully that's reassuring to some. And the second is, which is the other side of that coin, that not all voices in our heads are messages from the higher self. The Empress, that is the subconscious mind, which we spoke about before the break, is capable of receiving vibratory messages from many different beings around us, from even people around us, and will pass the message either as a thought or a sound eventually. She's like a radio, which you can tune, and we're doing it by the type of vibration we embody. So whatever station we're on, that's the type of vibration we'll receive. Here's where the law of attraction comes in. We are what we think. We attract the same vibratory messages we send out. And so remember that not all sudden unexplained thoughts or sounds, voices in your head are messages from the higher self. And in fact, most probably are not. Only those that are distinctly intuitive. Now, whatever intuition we get from the higher self, we then need to balance it with the masculine mind, the logic, the intellect, the reason. A higher self might know the destination, but he has no ability to know what is the right choice here in our physical plane, and therefore should not decide for us what we should do. We must take responsibility for our own decisions and actions, balance them between intuition and reason, and walk our own path. And the more we practice, the better we get. And so this is the higher self, the cosmic side of our conscious masculine mind. Think of your conscious mind as the intellectual portion of the masculine principle, individuated to fit this particular incarnation and responsible for choosing your path in this lifetime. We have tools at our disposal. We're not alone. One of them is the higher self. You are bound by time, but you're free to move in space. Your higher self is not bound by time. It knows your past and your future, but it cannot move in space. You know the details of your world, and you're able to sense the circumstances that surround you and make decisions, but do not know where you are going. Your higher self knows your high-level map. He designed it. He knows the destination, but he cannot participate in the game. You are the game piece. You are the player. He just knows the prize, where it's buried, and has designed some milestone and restrictions you have on your path to personal victory. This, in a nutshell, sums up the masculine aspects of our archetypal mind. Shortly after you were born, you started crying. You were suddenly in an environment which was unfamiliar. It was cold, your body was no longer surrounded by warm liquid, and minutes later you were probably placed in your mother's arms, and that felt warm and soft, and your body sank into her chest, gravity perfectly mobilizing your weight into it. Some things in our reality are purely objective. Gravity is one of them. The fact that everything we come in contact with can be in the form of either gas, liquid, or solid matter is another. No one's going to tell you that a burning log is cooler than an ice cream cone. It's an objective truth which we all share. Ice cream is cooler than a burning log. Now remember, everything in our reality is a manifestation of the mind. Our mind perceives light to be matter, based on the density of speed or vibration of its particles, which means that all these laws of nature, these objective laws of nature that you perceive to be the base of your subjective reality, are shared amongst us all. And they are also a part of your mind because your mind has to perceive them. They're not external to you. There is nothing that is external. It's all in your mind. The illusion reverses everything. Mystical and esoteric traditions tell us that. In the illusion, everything is reversed. All that you think is truth is actually false, and what you think is false is actually truth. When you're looking out, you're really looking inwards into your own mind. The closest thing that you perceive as matter is your body. Your body is actually the most outward object in the universe when it comes to your individual perception. Everything else, the entire universe, is inside you. The object that you perceive to be the furthest, say God, for example, or if you're an atheist, then the place, the point from which all light in the universe emanated, is actually the closest object to your true nature, with close and far also being objective perceptions of the collective mind, just like the illusion of time. We all share the same objective laws of nature. And that part of the mind is called the subjective mind in Hebrew wisdom, or the high priestess in tarot. She, and I call her she because she's the cosmic side of your feminine subconscious mind, represents the laws of nature which operate in you. You see, you are a microcosm of the entire universe. Your being is a mini solar system. In fact, in occultism, the energy center in your body are called after the planets. And so you have the Saturn center, the Mars center, the Jupiter center, which is the solar plexus, and it goes on and on. You have the Moon center, the Mercury center, the Venus center. The interactions between these centers are subject to the laws of our solar system and the laws of nature. Temperature, space, time, weight, viscosity, solidness, they're all objective perceptions governed by your subjective mind, the high priestess. It is the microcosm of Mother Nature in you. Now, the high priestess, the subjective mind, or the letter Gimel in Hebrew alphabet, is also the seat of cosmic memory in your body. You have memory of the entire cumulative set of all your experiences from all your incarnative lifetimes, as well as your purpose and life programming as designed by your higher self for each and every one of these lives. Simply put, the cosmic subconscious, or the subjective mind, knows everything that is, has been, or will be about you. She communicates to her young sister, the other side, the individual portion of the subconscious mind, the Empress, whatever information from that pool of memory that the Empress needs to know for this current lifetime in your immediate experience. And the subjective mind, the high priestess, does this via intuition, just like the higher self communicates with the conscious mind via intuition. All communication between the cosmic and the intellectual parts of our mind are done via intuition. But between the high priestess and the Empress, the subjective mind and the intellectual subconscious, there is no breakdown of communication. They both speak the same language. Now, because she governs the laws of nature in you, and because she has to track everything that is happening in your life for future recording, she sits between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. In other words, you can think of her sitting where the veil is, which we've mentioned before, between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. This way, whatever message the subconscious mind, which is the body, sends to your awareness, the conscious mind, is always coded with an experience around these laws of nature. You subjectively experiencing your body within the objective reality of the cosmos. Your own body is different than anyone else's, but it has weight, temperature, etc. Everything that is happening in your subjective reality is being sent through her to the subconscious mind for processing and response, while being recorded in the cosmic memory. So she, the subjective mind, is really the hub of communication between the two sides of your intellectual mind. She's called the subjective mind because she delivers the objective experience that is causing you to have a subjective experience of your own. It's important to mention that she exercises no judgment in terms of what she's passing between the two sides of your intellectual mind, between the conscious mind and the subconscious. Whatever messages she gets, she records and then sends along. The content of the messages is irrelevant. She just passes them along. She doesn't care if the conscious mind's sending bad messages, following the desire of the ego personality, or good ones walking you towards your destiny. She just delivers them. And in Hebrew, she is represented by the letter Gimel, which means camel, the animal used in the ancient days for transportations and delivery of goods in Mesopotamia, where Hebrew wisdom emerged. In Hebrew wisdom, this letter also stands for the dichotomy between war and peace. She will deliver whatever message you send, of conflict or of peace, for she is like a camel, which you can use for both. It is the message that you choose to send which will determine how you will live your life. And just like the conscious mind controls the subconscious mind through will, that is, the masculine part of our intellectual mind controls the feminine part of our intellectual mind through will, the subjective mind is also controlled by the will of her cosmic husband, that is, the higher self. She listens only to him and to the unbreakable laws of nature. In other words, she is not subject to your will like her young sister is. And that's why you cannot will against the forces of nature. The subconscious mind, or the high priestess, is what is called in Christianity the Holy Ghost. It's the archetypal mother of your being. So really, the Holy Trinity in ancient Christianity is the Father, which is the higher self, the Hierophant, coming in union with the high priestess, the subjective mind, the individuated representation of Mother Nature in you. And they give birth to the Christ consciousness, the Son child, which is your reborn self. Now, this Son is really both the conscious mind and the subconscious, the two individualized portions of your intellectual mind that now do not have a veil between them. They have merged together. They have become one, the masculine and feminine. You became an androgynous beings. That is the Son in the Holy Trinity. And that's why there's only three in the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost. The remnants of this Trinity is depicted in Judaism as the triangle in the Star of David. It is the basis for all spiritual system. For something new to be born, there must be a union between the masculine and feminine. Now remember, the mother and father cannot initiate the process on their own. It must happen by your free will, every step of the treacherous, difficult way, and only during incarnations. You are the Son, regardless if you're a man or a woman, and nothing happens without you making each and every choice. So you see, there's really four players in this archetypal mind. Two players that are in our individualized intellectual mind, and two players in our cosmic mind. And they all communicate with each other in various ways and bound by intricate rules of interaction, preserving a delicate balance which is designed to ensure that you have freedom of choice while still having tools to get the information you need. And the question comes, why do we need to know all this? Why is it important to understand the structure of the mind, and how does it help us on our psychospiritual journey? Nothing in creation can happen until the masculine fructifies the feminine. I'll say it again. Nothing in creation can happen until the masculine fructifies the feminine. No action can be taken by the feminine principle without the will of the masculine one. What this means when it comes to the mind, because that principle exists everywhere in creation and the cosmos, is that we can control our future with the power of our thoughts. We are what we think. The subconscious mind must do what we tell her. We must give her great instructions, which is done with emotional imagery, either visual or sensory. Remember, she doesn't speak the language of the intellect. You can't just think something and think that your subconscious will take it as an instructions. You must have a feeling, an emotion in your visualization. Only then she'll know you're serious. And even then, she knows when you're really serious and when you're not. She knows when you actually mean it and when you don't. She knows your conscious mind better than you do. Visualize how you want to change yourself or how your life needs to be and what you want it to look like, and she will find a way to make it happen. She can't control other beings or external circumstances, so just you. So saying I want to win the lottery or I want my ex-girlfriend to call me will not necessarily work, but she can and will guide you towards your emotional desire using her power of analysis and perfect reasoning. Now, if the desire doesn't match the plan of the higher self, it will most likely end in a painful lesson. And if it does, and if it does match the desire of the higher self, it would most likely end in a joyful outcome. So both outcomes are really positive, but you must fructify her with the appropriate messages for her to act. That is why it is so important to pay attention. We must pay attention, which is the faculty of consciousness that the conscious mind or the magician card stands for. We must pay attention to all our thoughts and emotions. This can be overwhelming, so we must learn to do it step by step. This is what mindfulness means. We literally create our lives with the images that we send to the subconscious mind. She must follow the messages she's receiving from us. So you send her negative messages and she'll bring on negative outcomes. It's like you tuned your radio to a negative vibration. And so paying constant attention to thoughts and the emotional imagery which follows them is critical. We cannot change the past, but we can control our future by paying attention to our thoughts and deliberately sending good images to the subconscious. That is, emotionally visualizing what we want our state of existence to be. We must also pay attention to the messages from the subconscious, the messages that are coming backwards from her, which are feelings and sensations, how our body is, and to our intuition, that is, messages received from a higher self. Developing awareness of what is happening in our body is critical. It is the tool of communication between our subconscious mind and us. The entire purpose of our journey is to purify desire by dissolving the ego personality so that we follow the will of our higher self. This concludes our show for today. There's a lot of information, I know, so I want to thank you for sticking with me all the way through. It's not an easy subject, so take time and let it sink in. I want to remind you that questions are welcome and that no question is irrelevant. They tell me what you want to know and help me build new episodes. Questions of generic nature will be answered on the show. Others I will answer directly, so keep them coming. You can ask questions on the Kabbalistic Mystic Facebook page, on Twitter, where I go by Hebrew Mystic, or by emailing me directly through the website. You've been listening to Kabbalistic Mystic. You heard music today by Moksha. I'm your host, Ovadia Batat, signing off. May you find love in every moment.